Hi Ishika, welcome to IWCC Tech Talks. We're very
Hi,
excited.
Pooja. I'm well,
How is,
excited and nervous.
I'm also a bit nervous. I'm always nervous before when I'm in front of camera. I would like to ask you, how did you get interested in photography?
Um, yeah, long story short, it wasn't a passion. It wasn't something that I was doing and practicing and interested in. My dad used to shoot a lot, and very avid, photographer at home. So we actually, as kids, used to run away every time we saw the camera coming out. We used to run away because it meant, oh my God, we have to like stand, hold. And at that time, everything was manual. So it's hold for focus, hold for exposure. If it was a self timer, then that was another thing, or find somebody or place it. But in short, I think I'd done my BA in economics. I knew I didn't want to do anything with regards to economics as a career. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved animals, and I always thought I would do something with them. But my sister was married in LA, and she was taking a couple of courses in Santa Monica College in Los Angeles. And she kind of, sort of said post graduation that why don't you come and feel around and see what you feel like, doing and exploring. And I took a whole bunch of things. I took marine biology because I always wanted to swim with dolphins and whales. And photography was something that, oh, this class looks cool, it looks fun, black and white, photography, transparency. So I took it just out of filling up my credits and thinking it sounds fun, not knowing that eventually this was going to be one of the best classes that I'd ever been to. It was, I think for the first time in my life, I loved going to school, in a sense that I enjoyed a class. I don't think any of us were exposed to any sort of visual class or medium as kids in school, in the arts factor, except for art class. So I think this was like a really interesting, plus I had a great teacher, Mr. Jones back there, and it just made it so interesting. So suddenly I found something. And eventually that's why I keep laughing. I fell into it. It wasn't a planned thing. And I thought I would do something with animals still. Like I thought I'd be a National Geographic photographer, and all of those things. But as of now, this is my animal kingdom right here.
Do you click a lot of photographs with Akira, like you were saying your father would take out photo
Oh my God,
camera
yeah.
and does she
Yeah,
run away?
the thing with the phones, and I use the phone a lot. I think that's because on assignments you're carrying so much of gear, that even on a holiday, I'm just like, there's no way I'm taking a camera. Unless I'm probably going for something like a wildlife, photography sort of expedition or sanctuary or something like that. But with Akira, it's very on the phone, on the sly, and on the fly. She sometimes doesn't know I'm doing it, and sometimes when she does, she's okay with it. She's gotten used to this is her.
Since you've been doing publicity and onset stills for a lot of films and series, how do you capture the essence of the story? How do you discuss with the director?
I think initially when I first started, I didn't know what all on-set photography entailed. As a first film, Devdas, I just kind of went on the set, and I found my way and I did something. It landed up being that I loved the medium, and I kind of was enjoying being an observer. That I did Devdas, and then I did Veer Zara, and then I think Devdas was the first time I figured publicity stills hota hai. I'd never been on a film set before in terms of, for work. I had never worked before also. So for me, just being on a set was intimidating enough. And then seeing that there was another side to it, that, you don't just photograph, you shoot, but there are images that are used that, what you took for granted on your hoardings, there was something to it. It happened by procedure. There was publicity designers, they'd get in touch with photographers. And I think the time I was there was Atul and Farooq Chotia that were like really big at that time. And they used to do a whole bunch of them actually. But I think for approaching it came later. It came later when I figured that this is what I like doing. That this is my strength also to a certain extent, that I like that the way I shoot. And I think then I started taking interest in it myself. Like I'd get a script and I'd read it and I'd imagine what I would think was an image, or something that would stand or represent the story or the film. And you have directors that are really nice and easy, and they're collaborative. They're happy enough to know if you approach them, they're nice enough to be with you on it. Not just be like, okay, she's a photographer, let her. What does she have to do? She has to keep taking photos the whole day. But they're nice enough to say, yeah, you know what, actually, I think that's a good idea, or that's a good frame. Let's do that. And now we've started breaking down. Like I started breaking down scenes and thinking, and plus with Akira, it's difficult. I can't be there on a set for 70 days and 90 days at a stretch or anything. So if I get something, I kind of sell the fact that, look, I will come on these dates. This is what I think is important. This is what I think will work for Imagery later, publicity-wise, and I will give it 100%. So I'm kind of selling the fact that I'll come for less days, you spend less, but I'll get the job done. So, but it's interesting. It's come a long way. I didn't know this was existing initially.
Yeah, so basically, do you like take some scenes, or you think the scene will be this image will be interesting, and you make sure you go on those days? Is that what you?
Yeah. So one is the image, the visual of what a scene or an image from the film represents. What would be a good poster? Like there's some things that when you take it, it's not going to make the poster cut because it's maybe the climax of the film, or it's an action sequence they want to save for later post-release or something. So there also that sort of aspect of filmmaking where when you're marketing the film, you market a film based on your character, your actors, your director, your story, and you don't want to give away too much, and there's some images that you want to hold on. So I think if I was looking at it in that sense, it would be essentially the story and what would represent the film and story emotionally. And if I could get that, then that's your game. It's mainly, but you also keep banking. You're banking on even a location. It could be a beautiful location which maybe can be used in a composite even later. So it's not just the faces, it's your plates, it's your maybe an action sequence that you want in the bank. It maybe it's working stills. Working stills are beautiful, and to have as memories also, but also just what goes into making a film. And I really enjoy that. Like that's the one thing also that when I'm on set is I push to get some good working stills. And if I get, I think on a day, if I go to shoot and if I get one image, even just one, the whole day, I'm happy. I'm happy that, okay, it was a good day. I got one. But of course, with the problem with digital is like you shoot hundreds and a few hundreds and thousands, and then come back and then you hold your head and you're like, no, this cannot be happening. But essentially, yeah, I do sort of predetermine what would be ideal, and then otherwise, then you find it. Sometimes you find it, you don't know, you haven't planned for it, you don't know it, and you're going through the shoot, and then it's that one iconic image that stands out, and you know that this is that.
Usually on-set stills and publicity stills are not. People don't think about it on the production level a lot of time. I'm sure it is changing, but how difficult it is to convince the producers that why is it important, and how do you go about that?
So I think earlier on, and I just realized that I've been doing this for 20 years. Like I feel like it was just 10 years ago. So earlier on, yeah. So earlier on, maybe like the early 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5 till about then, it was there wasn't that much prominence in terms of, okay, just get a photographer on board. Let's get the job done. Get somebody. They'll document. We'll get some stills. We'll use it for a little bit of PR and all of those things. So I think it's begun changing a lot more since. So I think in terms of what prominence and importance you had initially, which was zilch, is now a lot more. Like people do want to have a good photographer on set. People do want to record, the making of their films. I guess somewhere people like themselves also, so you want to have that documentation of what you went through and what the film was like and the makings and the struggle and all of those things. But I think it's also realizing now that this works, and this is a medium that, if I get somebody really good on set, I don't have to do the publicity stills later. I don't have to do an entire studio shoot and marketing and tam jam of, hire a studio and all of those things. So it's interesting that it's come that way. There are still some battles to fight, or to, push and stand your ground and be a little firm, be a little firm in that sense. But it comes eventually. And I think if you're good enough to, work hard and do what you do, you find a balance. And then they realize your importance. You know what I mean? I think
and
so.
Also for them it's difficult to, one has to understand everything is there on the set with costume, with art and production design. Whereas you have to shoot it later, it's going to be difficult with, it's just increasing the budget.
Exactly.
So I think an intelligent producer would always want a good on-set photographer
Yeah, and it depends on the the director as well, and your cast and everything. Because sometimes if it's a tough film, if it's a difficult film that is really hard to shoot to begin with, your stills won't be that magical maybe, and you will be struggling, and you'll get great moments, but will it make the cut in the marketing sense of, they want a clear picture, or does the clear picture not work for the film? So it's a toss, and you understand also what they're used to and everything. But I think it's coming along. I think it's changing a little bit, and I think we're still the most least priority on a film set. Like if ever you have to clear a set, and it's the first person out is the making person and the photographer. So it's like you sneak and you find your way back in, and you hide behind a tree or a bush or under the table, or I don't know what. You keep pushing it to get back in there. But it's fun. Yeah.
And how is the relationship with the cinematographers?
That has to be the best.
I would like to know what sort of protocol as an onset photographer, and what do you maintain? Like, is there anything that you keep in mind on the set?
I don't want to be in anyone's way first. I definitely don't want to be in the shot. I don't want to be that person where they point out and they're like, "Arey, वापस take करना पड़ेगा इसकी वजह से." I don't want to be that person. You don't want to be called out. So I'm always really careful about where I'm standing, where I'm grounding myself, what the movement is. So I'll actually keep poking my nose and whatever I can to see the rehearsal. Sometimes you're allowed to see a rehearsal, sometimes you're not. But then I'll ask a first AD, I'll ask somebody, I'll harass them in the nicest way possible, saying, "Boss, what is your frame? What is your blocking? Who's in it? Which way is it working?" I'll always befriend the cameraman and your sound guy. They're your two friends on set. Because you want to scuttle and get placed with the DOP. You want you want that. Sometimes you want that shot. Sometimes you want another sort of angle. But you don't want to be in the way. You want to get the moment. You want to definitely try and maximize not being seen in a sense. So I think you have to be aware that they're making a film. There's a lot riding on every day that's being made, And I know that we get desperate about getting our shot as well, and you're really passionate about it, and you'll have photographers who get like seriously passionate about it. But you have to I think you have to also gauge the temperament around the room. If things are flying and shit's hitting the wall, forget it. Back off. Take a break. Back off. Go into a corner. Go into a darker space. Don't be seen. Find your movement. See who's having a bad day. So I think it's a lot about all of those things as well. It's not just going on set and shooting. It takes a lot of things actually to get that one shot.
I think it takes what you're saying. It takes a lot of combination of presence of mind and getting your work done. because I remember I've only worked with you one day on this film on the other
Yeah,
side of the door,
dope.
and
Yeah.
I was and I was so impressed with how you're carrying all your equipment, and just the fact that you were so friendly with everybody, and still you were getting your shots, but it wasn't like you were there on the set. I did not even feel that you were there on the set. Hi, Akira.
Mm. So much for
So
closing the door. But it's true. The other thing I also feel is that I want to be that one person. I don't. I mean, I would love to have an assistant. I would love to have help carrying, 12, 14 kilos of equipment on you. But then you can't move around silently. You can't hide. And I do have those pouches and everything. And they make fun of me now because they say, now you just bulldoze. Like they say, when you walk, you're just knocking people left, right, left. I said, and I don't mean to, but it is when you're carrying that stuff with you. It is. You feel like this one-man show, so to speak.
yeah, because I've seen you like 2, 3 bodies and lenses all over you, and yeah, but it is very impressive, and
But thank
also
you.
the kind of stills you've been. I mean, especially Sacred Games. I still have this image of Nawazuddin standing in front of the mirror, which was the
Mm,
first image that was released. It in a way it gives you. It doesn't say much, but it also says a lot. So this
mm.
kind of imagery always um, somewhat helps the producer to in the release stage. I mean, will you speak about the importance of these images during the release stage and how?
Yeah, sure. It's so what you're saying is also right. Sometimes you'll take an image unknowingly, but you'll realize later the impact that image can have and carry forward for a year and ongoing and ongoing and ongoing because so so there's some of course that you premeditate, you think that this will be great, and like I mentioned, like there's going to be some that will come at the time, at the moment, and it will be that image, and to recognize that is really hard. I think, and then that's where you have like good producers or your marketing team or your publicity designers who understand the film and understand the emotion and say, okay, let's go with this, and this resonates through. Like even the shot of Saif with the gun,
Hmm.
we took it for that purpose, and it's always the case. There's time is short, actors, I mean, not him, he was great, but sometimes actors are tired, they're spent, and then they have to recreate. Now if the camera's in front of the actor for the take, there's some takes I cannot be in the front, and I won't, because I just know that I'm in the middle of, apart from the eye line and everything, it's dead in their sort of mode of focus and sorry. Okay, yeah. So it's also I think where were we?
You basically were saying about actors and their eyeline
Yeah,
and
so the imagery also that you were talking about. So I was saying that image actually then carried forward. Netflix ran it. It became the image of Sacred Games along with Nawaz's mirror reflection, and that started talking about his character and what because you see him in the beginning, spoiler or not, I don't know, but you see him in the beginning old, and then you flash back to him being young. So it's that sort of recognition as well. But I think that importance also came. I think I didn't realize that could have an impact of selling a series or selling a film. And I think the only time I felt or knew that or understood what impact images can have is when we were working on Slumdog, and what had happened. I think, oh yeah, we delivered the images. The film was ready to, was ready of sorts, and they were looking for distribution. They still hadn't got distribution for the film. So they were going to Cannes to sell the film, and they had made a little brochure of all the stills. And it's a great brochure. It's big. It's got the kids in action running. It's got Dave. It's got Frida. It's got love story. It's got, them coming out of the slums. It's got gangster vibe and all of those things. But they designed it so well. And I remember something happened, and Danny messaged back saying that we sold the film, and he said, and I mean, he didn't need to, but he said something like, thanks to your images, we sold the film. And that really, really felt really good, because you don't get that kind of feedback, or you don't understand what impact your images can have. And then it was really nice of him to say that. And then so after that, I went very, hoppity and very happy about it. I'm like, I will sell those images. Let me do my job. But you realize that's what it can do. Your first look of a film can show you what a film is about. It can show you what to expect from a film. It's beautiful nowadays, the stuff that you see, it's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, and also these days there are these motion posters coming in with collages of images. So I'm sure all of that is contribution from people who like you, who are who get great images on the set.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
I also wanted to know, made you feel so strongly of doing more publicity and on-set photography, like the energy of the set and the whole atmosphere. What do you enjoy the most in this?
Yeah. I don't know why. It's like sometimes there are days that you're on set, you're on like 45 degrees or 50 degrees heat in Ahmedabad in an open field, and you're sweating, you're drenched, and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? There are those days that you question yourself. Uh, I don't know, man. It's like a really good high of super energy about creating something which is with collaboration. It takes a village to make a feature film, and sometimes I feel I feel really happy being a part of that in some way, in terms of whether it's the documentation or even if it's anything, it's just being, but that being on a film set is really, there's a certain amount of energy or a passion that comes with it, and a drive that you want to, and that you want to be a part of this, you want to make this, you want to see it to the end, you want to finish this, you want to see it up on a big screen. And for me, I'm not even part of that process of filmmaking, so to speak. I haven't shot anything in there, but it still feels like it's yours. You feel a sense of belonging. You have great camaraderie with the crew. You have you meet new people. I have so many friends that I've kept in touch with from the last 20 years, from Devdas time, from Veer Zara, from every film I worked on. I've made good friends, and I've had them along the way, and they're good people. So it's lovely to have that collaboration and be a part of that filmmaking process. It's a different energy. You know what it is. It's, even though you're in dust and you're in the slums, or you're in the rain and you're struggling to get that shot, but you don't want to let go. You don't want to pack up. You don't want to go into a shelter or a van and take comfort in that. You want to be there. But I think it's the thrill of that, and I think it comes with, again, like you said, wanting to be a part of something, the bigger picture.
Yes. And it's also something that you really enjoy so much that you don't really there's so much willpower in doing that I always have this thing that I shoot for straight 30 days, and you're shooting for 13 hours, 14 hours, and after the shoot is over is when you actually realize that what have you done to your body. But in those shooting time, it is, you don't actually think of it. Is just so much energy and passion in just being on the set.
Yeah.
Since you worked on national and international projects, is there any difference that you find on the sets of both the set culture, or the energy, or the the planning? Do you find any difference?
So I think I feel like I've been really lucky with being on projects that are organized to an extent. And in some way, everybody knows what the plan is, what we're going to do, what's the end product. I don't think I've worked on a project where the script is still being, those stories you hear about the script, abhi tak, matlab chal rahi hai, they're still writing the dialogues at the time. But it's, so I think essentially the number of people on set is is a lot with us, I think. Like we have cameras, and then we'll have like 5 people with one camera, 2 people running for a lens, 3 people. Like, so I feel there's a lot of people for one job. And I've noticed that is really tight on the international projects. They have one specific guy to do this, one specific guy, and they will not change. They will not venture. They will not. The camera guy will not hold the lens and run to get a lens. If there's an urgency, the lens guy will not hold the camera. If there's an urgency, they won't shift things like that unless it's a quick, it's a request or it's an urgent thing. But so I think that's one thing about I don't think it's manpower. I think it's just about, the amount of people we have and we employ versus they're on a tighter rein in terms of who does what. And I think that's maybe because of their laws as well. But I think in terms of efficiency, we get the job done. Sometimes with, I don't know how, in all that chaos, and sometimes, you've got external forces of like weather change or permissions or lack of permissions or anything. Somehow we get the job done. With them, I think they're obviously more systematic and organized and everything. Also, what happens, I think, with their cast or with their directors or everything, everybody is very minimal in themselves. So and what happens here is there's a full force of people around maybe an actor or around even a director, but over there it's much more, and less. Like I remember even for like Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, we had beautiful actors who were all mostly in their 70s, and we had one AD who was in charge of all of them. But he was on the ball with recognizing what each one wanted and what they needed, or what, whose timing had to be where. So there weren't one AD for each actor, which then sort of, adds you up over there. But so I think in that sense, they're able to, their workflow, they're able to manage with less people on set, which I think is great. And also they don't have, if there's makeup, there's a makeup team involved. That makeup person will come, do the job and leave. So your actor doesn't have, another 3-4 people around them constantly engaging with them. So I think in that sense but the other difference I find is I think we're more like a team. We're more teamwork and we're more together in it, in a sense. Whereas over there, they're very single individual. They each have their own laws, their rules. They will also be really strict with who gets to do what. And sometimes they'll just put up their hands and say, it's not my job, I'm not doing it. And I understand that comes from laws and unions and insurance, but I feel like that's essentially what difference there is. I think in terms of, we give a lot less time for prep, I think, what I've noticed on a feature film, in terms of prep or rehearsals or all of those things. And I've realized that, they spend a lot of time more on prep, getting it down so that they don't waste time on shoot.
Ishika, where do you draw your inspiration from? You need to like unwind and find inspiration, and is there a way you do it? Or
honestly, I wish I did. I wish I did more, and I wish I did have, or I did. Okay, let's not go to did, because did is gone. So I wish I do that more. I wish I do spend a lot more time in thinking what are the new things I can do, how I can reinvent myself. I don't. As of now, I don't. And with Akira, it's really hard to do that, as you can see with the interruption. But I think what happens to me is that challenge comes to me on set. Invariably on a feature film, I have gone in really, you go in nervous, you're not sure whether you'll fit in. It's you always, as it is, you're always alone. You're that one photographer, so you got to find your space, find your comfort zone in that tribe. But I think for me, the challenge always comes on set. It's depending upon what film we're doing, with who the cameraman is, who's the director, what is expected. So I've landed up realizing that I land up getting challenged and reinventing myself on each feature film. that I've done. Like I remember Slumdog. I feel like I was complacent before, like just after I'd done a feature, and I was comfortable. Like I was like, okay, how can it, bad can it be? But I was pushed. I didn't know that, this man, Anthony Dodd Mantle, was going to be running around things. We're going to go through trains. We're running up and down staircases. You're physically challenged is one thing, and then physically, he's using these new equipments and small stuff. So his maneuverability is really fast, which means I can't be comfortably standing there, which means I still need to get my shot. So how do I do that? How do I change my game of standing back or being in the corner or being a lot more slow about certain things, which meant I had one eye through my viewfinder, but my one eye was on him on the side, seeing what he's doing, being there, but moving with him. So I was trying to sort of use his energy to give me that also, because I thought maybe this film has to be shot that way, and that's what I did. Like this, that's one of the ones I remember. I mean, technology wise, like equipment wise, of course, it would be great to have some really good equipment. And I've had decent equipment, but I've always felt that, I like there were times I've shot with, I think, lenses that want 2.8, and that's insane. On a film set, you want 2.8. You're begging for light, But I used to have like openings of 4 or 5, 6, but and that would push you, harder, because you're like, I need this. But so I think somehow I don't prep for being pushed, but I get pushed. I get challenged on the job.
Yeah, and also, I feel a lot of us these days, like especially when I'm shooting a film which is really tight on budget, and what I try to do is, try and capture the light which is ambient light, or just use the practicals and light. So, we are shooting, we end up using our super speed lenses, or, fast lenses which have opening of 1.3, or which is when, and we shoot on 1.3, and which is when I'm sure it must be getting more difficult for you.
Yeah, it's crazy because how much... sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. You go first, then I'll ask the question.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, so there's the thing, because at that time you were still working at 3200 as an ISO. Now it's 6400. And that time I was shooting on film. I did 2 features on film, which I shot one transparency, and I would shoot some black and whites. And it was crazy because I would have one camera to shoot transparency, so I'd get better quality for scanning in the hope of publicity, hoarding, and the whole, small format, medium format, and all of those things. And the other one, I would shoot black and white stills, but it was a 400 ISO, which you had to push, technical terms, but I would push it 3 stops, and then there were times that you didn't have enough. So you'd realize, this is not a black and white moment. This is a beautiful sunset one. So it's like, oh, let me wind the roll back, tick, 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 tick. Then you wait for the thing, and then you put the color one, and then you shoot that, and then you write there exposed 1 to 10, and you hope you remember that when you load it back. So it's that 1.4 is a nightmare.
So somebody is asking, what are the specific kind of equipment have you been using throughout? In fact, I would extend this question to the when you were using film as your medium, and now as digital, what kind of equipment and lens have you been using?
So when I was doing film, I started with a Canon, and actually right up to last year, I've been a full loyal Canon favorite. Canon, where are you? Come approach me.
I hope they're listening.
I swear. No, but I used to, it was pure Canon, and it's because what I started on. And I used to have this old AE1 manual camera, which I used to work with, which I still have. And I would use a tungsten film sometimes to shoot transparencies in the day, because you guys would use tungsten lights. It was like, oh my God, what is this? Like HMI meets tungsten meets, figuring which balance, which film for which light to happen. That would be, one set. And then the other thing, I would use like an Ilford or a Tri-X 400 to shoot film stills. And that was on my Canon camera. I think when I first bought my digital, it was a EOS, a Canon. It was an 8 megapixel one, and because I couldn't afford the other ones, and that had the 24-70, 75, 300, but it wasn't a 2.8. It was a 3.5, and there was a 4 and a 5.6. But I would use it and shoot it, and then really like I feel like my lung capacity is increased in life because the amount of times I've held my breath to hold the shutter down. And sometimes you don't have a tripod, you don't have a cable release and everything. So you're just doing, jugaad of hold it here, take a breath, and, don't say anything. um, but it worked sometimes, it worked because I think you pushed and you tried to do whatever you could. And of course, that was film. And then digital, I mean, that was digital. And then then I think I bought myself a Mark III with a 24-70 2.8 and a 75 200 2.8, and that was like my first 2.8 lens. But which was very late. It was like 2009, I think. So really, really late in that sense. But I had that, and I would use this little muzzle, and then I think I've been using that since, and just keeping that, pushing it. And every time I felt like I had to, buy new equipment, I didn't know what to buy because everything was changing every year.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually then I started renting out. And again, if I'd rent out, it would be Canon, and it was, it would be the Mark IV or the DSR, the 50, or only the last film I did, I really needed a silent shutter. All this time I had been with catching the shutter. That was the other stress being on set because you had, people and actors who don't want that distraction. So how did you sort of, get by that? But I think the first time is this last film that I did in Jan where I used one of the Sonys because for silent shutter. But I hope to be back with Canon again.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And there are these new DSLRs which have mirrorless. So how do you I mean,
Feel?
have you used any of those? Yeah.
So I did, yeah. So this last one was the Sony, the R4 that I used, and I only used it because it was silent. I really, really, really I couldn't have done this last film without, with being that close and then not being, inobtrusive and silent. So I used it, and I'm still very used to film and that heavy big glass. So it's going to be a while. It's beautiful still. It's still getting, it's getting there, I think. And some of them are fantastic. You can shoot features on them. But it's just personally, I'm used to that old school glass and heaviness of, the what the Canons had. So I'll hopefully get warmed up sooner or later. But it's beautiful. That not having the sound is a big added advantage.
Okay. So somebody is also asking, do you archive your original negatives?
Yeah, I have them all, including some of my strange assignments that I did. I really, really need to archive them better. I have them, they're safe and sound, but I really need to scan stuff. I need things organized, and that's one of my biggest drawbacks. And now with digital, um, I'm petrified of having, what do you say? Losing out on something, the hard drives or the hard drive caching, and uska backup lena, then uska backup ka backup, then backup ka backup ka backup. And by the end, it's like I'm so confused which one is where. There are 3 sets, that which is the last one I worked on. So I haven't mastered the archiving bit yet. I intend to. I was supposed to this lockdown, and not happened.
Yeah.
And I said I do
Yeah.
use Lightroom. It's just that I have so many catalogs that you have to there has to be an organized way to file that particular film. Now I have that film in this catalog. I've done a couple of versions. I've done some color corrections. I've sent it out. Technically you have to sort of import it back, but I haven't managed to master that aspect yet, and somehow I still function. I don't know how.
But you've also done a coffee table book, and you have worked for magazines, different magazines. How is that photography, still photography, different from working on the set?
Mm, I think it's your personality that will drive you to do, or your or your certain, not desperation, or but your need to survive. I did go, and I would go drive all the way to town and meet magazines and then do some shoots and things, and it never clicked with me for some reason. And I I'm I feel I play to my comfort, but at the same time I did a couple of shoots. It's a process. It's meet the editor, meet this, your stylist, your da 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 da. This is on the day, recce going, and I don't know if why it would throw me off, and maybe because there's so many more in the team now. It's not just you alone, and that I think that would just personally throw me off. It's not that I would do it. I can't do it. I can do it, but I just I chose not to go in there deeper. And I think I had the chance that I didn't have to, in a sense. I mean, I didn't have to pay for rent. I was living with my family and everything. So in the beginning, it was okay. I made by it. But it was interesting to see that it takes a lot of people to make that one photo. It's, you have your stylist, you have your clothes, you have your designer, you have your makeup, you have your hair, you have your lighting, different lighting. You may not be using your typical studio lights. You're probably using, your film lights, which means getting a gaffer, getting reflectors. So it is another filmmaking little bit process on its own. And it's just something that never resonated with me personally. Though when I do publicity stills, I try and remember what I like doing and what I like shooting on a film set, or when I go out on the street and shoot, which I've not done in years, but when I did. And I try and sort of imbibe that feeling and that emotion and try to look for that one thing when I'm shooting in a studio floor. I think that's the thing that I use for me to help me do those assignments that may not be my comfort zone.
So now I'm going to take some questions that people have been asking. So there was just one question which spoke about: do you think the production houses here would invest in making unique form of stills such as Polaroids, or using large format or medium format?
So I think if there's an interesting idea that a photographer has and he's able to sell it to the person, it depends which company, which director, what film, who's as passionate about photography as you are on that film set. If the producer is, then you might have that chance. If your director is really passionate about photography and stills, you might get that chance to showcase and do those stuff, and present and say, okay, you know what, let's do this. Let's get these new lenses. Let's do this Polaroid thing, and all of those things. And then they're willing to invest in it. But all the time, and everybody, no. I did have Yashraj actually buy the camera gear initially for me for one of the films, because I said, you have to invest in it, and you must have your own gear. Because I didn't have it for sure. So I said, it's good. And it actually did. It was there in there, it was there with them, which went through photographers for a couple of years. So it's made its job, it's done its job of being, in-house in a sense. Yeah.
So there's one more question which says, some golden advice for young film still photographers.
Ooh, golden. It's hard. I will say it's hard because I've met and I've been with a couple of photographers who really are really sweet, passionate, and everything. But again, they also feel like they're just in headlights, and there's some who are able to come, and that's why I feel like it's your personality. If you're able to take it, and if you're able to make those decisions and that confidence a little bit on your own, it's it will happen. It will happen if you persist. It'll happen if you, shoot things on your own. Maybe, maybe your friend is shooting a short film and you want to cover that, and you do that. And a lot of times, sometimes I've done things for no money. I'm not saying that that's the way to go, but but if you can, and if you can, do something that you're passionate about without money, because it's going to be in your bank and you can showcase it to somebody for a foot into the door saying, I've done something, and may I, and I'd love to shoot this. So you've got to sell yourself, your work, but, try not selling your soul. And I actually want to help. I want to help in some way. I haven't figured it out yet, but I want to do something. I mean, I love recommending photographers and people that I think are really good and talented. And, I really feel like I'm mere bache at times. But I haven't done jack, so, but I love it. I love it. Like, there's so many of them, they're young and they're there and they're ready and they're hungry. And they do need, I think, a little help. And I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet how to help the ones that don't have any connection or don't have any association with the film line. And, maybe they're from another town. How do they make their way here? So let's see.